She just said it's awkward for me. And you're like, yeah, he's sexy, isn't he? Dwarves are cool. Dwarves are cool. But he's sexy, right? You try to make him sexy, right? Dwarves are cool. What are these questions now? What is the dwarf sexy? What about her dress? Well, it looks like Anime News Network has once again made a fool of themselves with another disastrous interview with a creator based on the internet. All day yesterday, my feed has been full of people saying, my gosh, what is this interview? What a mockery. This is an absolute joke. What are these questions? All that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd jump on here and go check out the interview for myself. See if it's actually that bad. I'm going to assume it's bad based on previous interviews with, like, say, the Mushoku Tensei or interview with Mifujin, where they just asked these really terrible questions. Now, I will say one of the questions they brought up one of the best quotes from Mifujin that I keep using to this day, which is where he says, if there's someone like Rudy is close to you and that person were to have the slight change of heart and try to start over, I sincerely hope that you won't abandon them on the spot. So there's some good that comes from these sometimes bad question, or at least mean-spirited questions that are obviously trying to attack the character. But anyways, let's just go check it out. Let's go see if it's as bad as everybody says, because I don't like to take other people's thoughts on this stuff. I like to go look for myself. But yes, this is an interview of the Delicious in Dungeon creator, Ryouko Kui. So let's go check out what she says in response to these questions. The first one, Kui-sensei. One of the primary things of Delicious in Dungeon is building community via shared meals. Could you share a meal or recipe that is similarly important to you? Kui says, so I thought about your question a lot, but I couldn't come up with anything special. But one thing my mother used to say, like when we make okonomiyaki, she advised me to use grated yams instead of water. So since then, I always use yam instead of water. But honestly, I've never compared the two recipes, so I don't really know the difference. but that's what I do. I don't know if she's implying here that she just doesn't cook, or she's just not very experienced in cooking. I would assume it's probably a case where she's told a lot of recipes, and so she has a lot of concepts of recipes, but she doesn't really know exactly what makes the difference there, what caused the difference there, which is honestly kind of funny to think about. Somebody that does their entire manga is about nothing but cooking, but they don't really know too much about the cooking. But again, it kind of implies here that it's more her saying, this is a recipe that I do, and there you go. That's your question. Of all the dungeon meals in Delicious in Dungeon, which seems most appealing to you and why? Which is one you'd least likely eat? Honestly, I'm a picky eater myself, so I don't think I want to eat any of them. But while I'm drawing the manga, I'm thinking about how fun it would be to eat it if I could. I could probably say that for pretty much everything that they cook. From the manga series, it's obvious you enjoy tabletop RPGs. Could you tell us one of your favorite player characters? So actually, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. Even the word tabletop RPG I hadn't learned until I became an adult. But I've seen a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, so I bought the player's guide and some related novels, so I have the knowledge to some extent. But I've never actually played tabletop RPGs myself. And that's the interesting thing, and I think a lot of people are criticizing this interview because they assume that. And yes, that seems to be the case. Like, if you look at any other interviews, like Faraway Paladin, they made the same statement there. Oh, so you're into tabletop RPGs. It's not really, from what I know, not as big in Japan, tabletop RPGs. I mean, they do have a culture there of them. I think even the Faraway Paladin one talks about that. He doesn't really talk about specifically this, but their own version of it. And so it's a fine assumption here, but I think that the problem that I have is so far we are 1, 2, 3 questions in, and we have not asked a single interesting question. We're asking, what do you want to eat? What do you not want to eat? What's your favorite recipe? Do you like tabletop RPGs? What kind of your play is your favorite? That's not really an interesting question. I mean, yes, it gets more into the character of the mangaka herself, but what is this? What are these questions? Like, ask about the lore of the world. Ask about, like, what inspired you to create the concepts of death and not death in that world. There's a lot of really cool questions to be asking. We're asking about tabletop RPGs. And I've heard some people say that they've actually asked this question of her before, and she said that she hasn't. So we're asking the same question. So maybe there could have been a little bit better, I guess, looking into Kui before we actually ask the questions. If you were to play one, do you know what kind of character you'd play? What are these questions? She's already said... Okay, I'm starting to get why people are upset about this interview. What is this? When I played Baldur's Gate 3, I played Human Rogue. Okay, it's Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, so it kind of fits there. But again, what is this question? Who cares? They want to play Human Rogue. Okay, we're going to get into the good questions now, right? Delicious in Dungeon features a very well-constructed ecosystem. How did you construct the unique relationship between monsters, for example, the Mimic and the Treasure Bugs? Okay, this is a decently good question. Decently good question. When I first thought about what kind of creature a treasure bug was, I wondered if the shape of it could be flat, what it would feed on, and what kind of life it would lead. And that's when the idea came to me. Then it was just all my imagination. There's a monster. How do they move, develop? It's purely based on my imagination. So it's kind of just going with it. This is the concept I came up with, and then I kind of just flowed from there. A decent question. This is our first decent question. Do you have a similar monster fascination as Laios? What was the first monster to capture your imagination? So I love monsters, but not to the level of Laios. But as a kid, I played the game Panzer Dragoon. Cool. That's cool. I loved Panzer Dragoon. That's cool. And I was attracted to the dragon, the protagonist of the first Panzer Dragoon rides. I found it really cool. That's cool. Again, that's a just like me moment. Just like me moment. Decent question. I'll give that a second decent question. Similarly, how did you come up with Laios' perfect monster? So when I was little, I drew all the monsters and wondered, what kind of monster is the strongest, or which one is overpowered? That part of the manga is based on that memory. Again, another decent question. A lot of fans had a strong reaction to Laios and Toshiro's confrontation with one another. Quite a few fans on social media seem to relate to Laios' difficulty with reading social cues and related it to their own experiences on autism spectrum. Did you envision Laios as autistic when conceiving his character? How would you describe the friction between Laios and Toshiro? Here's the first one I think a lot of people are really annoyed with. One of the first questions they're annoyed with. And this is one of those ones where I think if the author actually responded a different way, people would probably have acted a different way. Like if she completely said, yeah, sure. Let's see what she said first. I don't have the full idea here. Kui says, so my understanding is Laios is a really normal person. There's nothing special, and everyone can relate to a person like him. I also relate to him, so I don't think I'm writing anything special regarding Laios. That's why I think people can relate or appreciate him. Some people might say Laios is a bit autistic, but Shuro has his own difficulties. Everyone has their individual problems. It's not just Laios or Shuro. The problems are mutual. We always need to try to understand and learn from one another. Sometimes you might hurt another person, but that's the process. We need to understand other people. Again, it just seems like it's really kind of a question that's really saying people are saying this. What do you think? What do you think about your character being that idea? So I can see where people are making the argument that this interview is really just taking the fandom and trying to push it upon the author. But I've seen individuals like Psychoultress was talking about the idea of it being on a autistic spectrum. It was the one snip that I seen was really kind of relating to people saying that, do you think he's kind of fallen that spectrum? And I think there is kind of some connections there, but at the same time, it really does feel like Kui is responding saying, it's not that deep, bro. This almost feels like it's not that deep, bro. Yes, people are going to relate to character. I relate to the character. It's not that deep kind of thing. I've seen some people argue that there's a possibility that Kui herself might just not see it because it's so normalized. Like it's just not seen as something that is labeled that way. I don't know. Again, it just really kind of points the picture of this is what the fandom is saying. And Kui is just really saying, no, it's not that deep. It's just, that's Laios. But I do give a respect to the way that she's responding to this and saying that, yeah, I mean, if that's how you want to connect to it, that's great. I connect to them the same way. And I think it's good in connecting to people that way so you can understand them. There's a little bit of a connection here, coming together here, which I think is a good response by Kui. In both the anime and manga adaptations, most of the series' fan service comes from peek at Senshi's underwear. In the spirit of this, could you describe Senshi's sex appeal? Oh, I heard about this one too. So the term fan service feels a bit off for me, but I have seen people talk about Senji's sex appeal. The reason I came up with this idea of showing Senshi in his underwear is that when I was little, I used to live in a city where an old man hanging his laundry while just wearing his underwear. It was awkward for me, and I really didn't want to look at him. What an uncomfortable question. Oh my gosh. Senshi's sex appeal. Yeah, this guy used to do this, and it was really awkward for me because he just doesn't mind people looking at him, and I didn't want to look at him. So what about his sex? How could this turn any more awkward to ask that question and relate to that? I mean, again, it's a fandom thing. This This interviewer is looking at what the fandom is asking and looking at, and they're going, hey, what do you think about all these things that people are saying about your product? Rather than asking questions, anything else besides that. These are fandom questions. These are thirst questions. It was awkward for me, and I really didn't want to look at him. But from his perspective, he really didn't care. He didn't care what other people thought. I found that vibe interesting. So, Senshi is a similar type of person who really doesn't care what other people think about him. Laios is probably more like me and feels a little bit awkward looking at other people in just their underwear. But I thought this vibe was really funny and interesting. That's why I drew Senshi that way. So it's not that I made him sexy. I made him awkward. I guess it's not that awkward a question. Senshi's rather handsome, though, isn't he? He's really nice hair and a full beard. She just told you how it's awkward for me. And he just doesn't care. It's a cool vibe, but she just said it's awkward for me. And you're like, yeah, he's sexy, isn't he? Dwarves are cool. Dwarves are cool. But he's sexy, right? You try to make him sexy, right? Dwarves are cool. Anyways, I actually thought Marcille's dress during her time as the dungeon lord was really appealing. What are these questions now? What is the dwarf sexy? What about her dress? What are these questions? What are you asking right now? It was really appealing, even though her friends made fun of it. Were there any references for this design? What is this? I guess the reference is the design. I guess it's a decent... I don't know. Actually, there's no real-life model or reference for that dress. I just combined the clothes that Marcille's mother liked and also combined that of with the hood, which it was considered a little bit childish. So Marcille's friends are poking fun in a joking way, but the people around her don't really think her dress is funny or not cool. They're just making fun of her because the dress is a little out of character for Marcille. Moving on. Did you expect such strong fan reactions to the relationship between Marcille and Falin? Here we go. Another fan question. Another fan one. Another one. Do you like that? Are you going for the... At least they didn't ask about the relationship and being like a pro push of something. When I draw my manga, I try to develop different than the fans' expectation. And I think that's a good thing. Thank you, Kui. Thank you. If for some reason you're watching this, thank you. I like the idea of an author sticking to what they want to do. Don't really push your stuff in the direction the fans want, because I think if you create something that people want or expect, then you're just creating what they already know. Whereas if you create what you want to create this unique experience, that's where you get the unique experiences from. Because if you create what the fans want, you're just going to create what everybody else has already made. When I draw my manga, I try to develop a different from the fans' expectations. If I care too much about how the fans will react, I think the story might become less fun and interesting. Exactly. So I try not to think too much about what the readers will react. In general, I'll just leave the reader's imagination, like how they react or how they conceive my manga. Cool stuff there. Again, yeah, sure, if that's what you want. Marcille and Falin, all right, cool. I'll just leave it to you. I'm not really going with what you want. Regarding the manga, this is the last question. This is the only thing I think... Okay, let's get this first. Regarding the manga's finale, do you envision any sort of spin-off following Izutsumi's pursuit of the Black Magician, or will she continue her life as she pleases as a beastman? I haven't decided yet, but for now, there's no plans to make a spin-off, but Izutsume might want to pursue and find the Black Magician and finally beat him, or she might live her life as she does. You know, she's like a really free person, so she might live her life as she likes. That's it. That's it. Okay, I agree, people. I think this was kind of a waste of time, in a sense. I mean, I guess the only real thing that we got here was, again, answers to what people are kind of assuming, and not really necessarily any questions about what is in the content of the manga. That's the problem here. It's, hey, you play tabletop, right? No, I don't. Hey, what kind of tabletop character you play? I play in Baldur's Gate Rogue. Any other questions? Yeah, so the treasure bugs. This is a decent question. One decent question right here. Monster Fascination with Laios. That's an okay question. It's a fun one. Hearing about Panzer Dragoon. That was really cool. And then it goes right into the fandom thirst. It's asking about the autism. It's going into the whole thing with Senshi's underwear. It's going into the whole thing about the Yuri, and that's it. Yeah, I kind of get people's frustration with this, and granted, it's like, what questions would you ask? Everybody has different questions they'll ask, so it makes sense that there's a little bit of a frustration here. I felt like this is kind of a waste of time. Hopefully, you guys found me at least entertaining reading through it, because now I feel like this video is a complete waste of time. But again, I like to make sure that I check this stuff for myself and not take, like, here's one thread up here that these people are cooking on it. Like, people are cooking this whole questionnaire to death. What recipe do you like? I can't cook. What characters do you play in DD? I don't play D&D. Why did you make Laios autistic? I didn't. Isn't Senshi cute? No. This is the funniest thing. The Senshi thing is the funniest thing, because she's literally like, I made it after a guy that creeped me out. You want to know more? But at least it kind of twisted it to, I found it interesting that he didn't care. And I always like that in some fan service is where they just don't care. It's just, it happens kind of thing. Anyways, that's my thoughts on this whole interview. Kind of a waste of time. It makes sense they got the interview because it's Kadokawa, and Kadokawa pretty much owns A&M right there. So that's why they got the interview. There you go. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. Hit the like button if you like this video. Thank you guys for watching. Y'all take care.